Century Next Bank is proud to sponsor Digital Weather Desk with local meteorologist Jared Floyd.
The Digital Weather Desk is your local source for the latest weather information to help keep you and your family safe and to plan your week. You can follow us on our social media platforms, download our app, and you can also find us at digitalweatherdesk.com. The Digital Weather Desk,
Powered by Century Next Bank.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining in to the Digital Weather Desk powered by Century Next Bank. What's next for you? Visit cnext.bank for more, the exclusive banking partner of the Digital Weather Desk. It's a Wednesday in February. Two words that are not the easiest to spell. Wednesday and February. That's how Rick Godley over in Ruston or in Lincoln Parish would say it. I used to visit with him on the radio many, many moons ago, and he would say, he would always say February. And I was like, that's how you got to remember how to spell it, because it's difficult. Anyway, check of I-20 this morning as we already run off onto a tangent. Nothing happening in terms of significant traffic snarl-ups this morning, which is good news as we hit 7:45 this morning. We'll be headed out to our little ones' day schools, Donuts with Grown-Ups, here in a little bit. Probably used to be Donuts with Dads, but then you want to include all the adults. You don't want grandparents to feel not included. You don't want moms to not feel included. You don't want aunts and uncles to not feel included. So they just moved it to Donuts with Grown-Ups. What I'm really glad is, and this is the most great because I can get on board with that. What I'm really grateful is because when they changed it to Grown-Ups, I'm glad they didn't shy away from the donuts. I'm glad they just stuck with Donuts and Grown-Ups. Kudos there, because they could have easily changed it to granola bars with Grown-Ups, and nobody wants to go to that. Donuts? Yes. Granola bars? So, yeah. Woo! I'm getting donuts this morning, so I'm in an extra good mood. Temperatures. It's cool, but not cold. Low 50s, mid 50s in some spots. We're on a warming trend. The dew points are climbing. The air's almost saturated, with dew points generally in the mid to upper 40s to low 50s. And so, again, you look at humidity values for you humidity hounds, the folks that prefer to see relative humidity over dew points, even though dew point is better. Again, the air's pretty saturated at this point, with humidity values generally in the 80 to 90% range. And for those of you wondering why dew point is better, one day I will make a big, long weather wisdom video about why dew point is better than relative humidity. But we won't do that today. A look at visibility, not a whole lot happening in terms of fog formation, but the clouds are on the increase. Most of those are mid and high clouds at this point, but the winds are already kicking up out of the south. Becky, good morning. Thanks so much for joining in. And what I mean by that is winds generally in the 7 to 10 mile an hour range right after sunrise usually points toward the potential for another very breezy afternoon. And Futurecast, which is made possible by Bayou Power Sports, I-20 frontage road in Monroe, advertises the same thing. These are sustained forecast winds from the Barron 3K model and has us generally in the 15 to 25 mile an hour range at times today. Again, these are forecast sustained winds. So I wouldn't be surprised for some areas to see gusts as high as 30, 35 miles per hour, maybe through the course of the day. But I would consider today more breezy instead of necessarily gusty. It's just going to be a breezy day. But I don't expect the wind gusts to be overly extreme at this point. Again, a reminder, dry ground in place, drought conditions, higher winds. The fire weather risk is higher than normal. Again, humidity values will be on the climb through the course of the day, so that does alleviate some of the fire weather stress there. But again, the risk is higher than where it should be for this time of year. May, Evelyn, good morning. Thanks so much for joining in. Those winds die down a little bit as we get into the day tomorrow ahead of our cold front, which will move through gradually through the day on Thursday. Good morning, Matus. Day planner made possible by the Monroe Chamber of Commerce and Leaders of Change. Learn more at monroe.org. Shows clouds increasing gradually through the day. Again, for most spots, we're already well into the 50s, but climbing probably into the mid-70s by around lunchtime. Good morning, Beverly. Or at least near 70, by lunchtime, mid-70s by the end of the afternoon. It'll be a warm day, above normal for this time of year, and continuing that string above normal temperatures. Blech. Good morning, Terry. I hope you're doing well as well. I do not have the best way with words this morning. Infrared satellite shows, again, the mid and high clouds on the increase, but the winds are out of the south, and we're already starting to see the Gulf moisture stream back in, so expect the low to mid-level clouds to become a more readily present force in the forecast as we go through the rest of the day. Your radar made possible by Brown's Roofing shows absolutely nothing, at least in our immediate area. But that should change as we go into the month of March. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. A look at Futurecast shows most locations continuing winds out of the south, a bit breezy at times through the course of the daytime hours today. Again, 15, 20 miles an hour, maybe some gusts to 25 or 30, but just a breezy and increasingly cloudy day. Warm, too, above normal for this time of year. And by early tomorrow morning, we've established this stationary front, just waiting to push through the area as we go into the day on Thursday. But it also could be kind of the lifting focus that helps to generate some showers. Now, as this front continues to drag southward into the region, as I mentioned, the winds are breezy today, but they really die down as we go into the day tomorrow. So that overrunning moisture over this boundary is not overly aggressive. And so that overrunning happens in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and you're not really seeing that in a significant fashion. So along the advancing boundary, as that front kind of acts as a squeegee in the atmosphere to kind of develop and lift whatever moisture we have available to develop clouds and rainfall, most of the rainfall looks to be fairly scattered and light as we go through the day on Thursday. In fact, the rain chances and the rain totals are slacking off instead of increasing as we go through the day on Thursday. Futurecast, in this particular run, the Barron 3K wants to bring some scattered storms behind the boundary, generally kind of elevated storms, Thursday evening. I'm not really concerned about that at this point. Again, severe weather threat is low to almost zero, but it can't rule out a stray storm developing along the boundary. High pressure settles in for the rest of the weekend. By Saturday morning, high pressure is basically right over our heads, but then that also starts to incorporate, as we work through the daytime hours on Sunday, a return flow of southerly winds, which will lead the warming trend that will likely carry us through the early parts of next week. There is a weak front that teases the area on Sunday. It moves in and then kind of stalls across the region. But again, note the winds are already back out of the southeast ahead of the front, and it's probably going to push that boundary back to the north as a warm front through the day on Sunday. I don't expect this front to actually advance completely through the area on Sunday. So we continue the warming trend through the early parts of next week. Margie, Susie, Ethel, Peavy, good morning. Thanks so much for joining in. So overall, in the grand scheme of what you're seeing forecast-wise through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there's not a lot of significant change from where we've been over the last couple of days. If you've been following the forecast, there's not a lot of change there. Now, what we are starting to watch a little bit more intently is in the upper levels of the atmosphere in terms of pattern changes as we go into the month of March. So look at Futurecast, and you can see that the moisture that we really accumulate ahead of the Thursday, Friday storm system, you're probably looking and going, how are we in this northwesterly flow with this weak trough of low pressure that's going to move through the region? How are we accumulating any kind of envelope of moisture across the Gulf Coast? Well, a lot of that's happening at the surface. Again, what we're looking at here is called total precipitable water in the atmosphere. Total precipitable water looks at total moisture in the column of air above us. So while our winds aloft are out of the northwest and the north, our winds at the surface return to the south this week, early this week and into this weekend. So you start to accumulate that Gulf moisture ahead of that Thursday, Friday cold front. So that boundary moves through, some drier air punches in, and again, therein lies the question as we go into the day Sunday, Monday, how are we accumulating moisture when our winds aloft are out of the northwest or west and northwest? How are we seeing this return flow of moisture? Again, because our winds at the surface or in the low levels are back out of the south at this point. So we're already starting to bring in some kind of envelope of moisture across the region through the early parts of next week. Meanwhile, let's look out to the west. Out to the west, you see a ridge of high pressure across northern Mexico that's giving way to this big, broad upper low. Now, yesterday, that broad upper low was hanging out in this area off the California Pacific coastline and just kind of chilling. And it wasn't really bothering us. Now it looks as though that system in some form is going to move into the central United States, middle to end parts of next week. Am I overly concerned about it? Not really at this point. It is a storm system that's probably going to impact our weather forecast, and it's going to impact our upper level pattern. But in terms of being a big problem, like I don't see that being a glaring issue. In fact, the upper level storm track kind of carries it off to our north. But it's too early to say that with any kind of certainty, because that's like a week away. So that's our storm system that we were talking about as it gets absorbed into the upper level pattern and moves to the north and east. Now, what I would say, regardless of whether this storm system is here, whether it's here, whether it digs farther southward and is here, that's really irrelevant at this point. We'll get to those details when we can get there. But I think the bigger takeaway is that this storm system, early to middle parts of next week, in whatever form as it moves through the central United States, it opens up for this storm system and then other ones behind it. And so the pattern again changes. Remember, we've been talking about this for the last few days, that most of our pattern has been northwesterly aloft. Not going to see a lot of return flow of moisture. This opens up the pattern to where now we're starting to see those deeper subtropical moisture sources that are moving back in across the region. So regardless of that Wednesday, that mid to late week storm system, it flips the pattern a little bit, and it could set us up for a rainy early half of March. The 6 to 10 day temperature outlook points above average. Duh, that shouldn't be a big surprise, just considering out of all that I just showed you, there's not this big, strong punch of Arctic air headed our way anytime soon, at least in the next 8 to 14 days. Is winter over yet? Maybe, maybe not. Can't really say either way with a whole lot of certainty. But again, winter's not making its return, at least here in the short term. And now we're starting to look toward March. 6 to 10 day precip outlook starts to show some confidence of trending above average precip wise. That confidence increases when you start to get outside of 6 to 10 days and you start getting into 8 to 14 days. Here's the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook. Again, duh, we're going to be above average. But then you look at the precip outlook. Again, as you start phasing toward March 5th to March 11th, there's starting to see a growing confidence of being above average precip wise as we see that pattern flip to just being progressively dry to being just more active with more moisture to work with. Again, we don't really want to get into specifics of, does this mean severe weather? Does this mean, flooding rain? Does it mean a combination of both? Does it mean neither? We don't know. But it does look more active. Just more frequent storm systems through the month of March compared. But here's the other thing. I remember saying that in October. I remember saying that in December. I remember saying that in January. And I've said it this month. And we're still in a full-fledged drought. So all of the data can say whatever it wants. But until we actually see a pattern flip that sticks, and it sticks for longer than a week to 10 days, we're still grasping at straws here. And I would also say that and fully admit that means that the confidence in the forecast is not as high as you would normally like it to be. Claudia, Louisiana Cookers on YouTube, Ben, Susan, Harlan, Georgianne, thank you so much for joining in. I will let Sarah know that you said good morning. She will greatly appreciate that. Daytime highs today in the mid-70s, increasing clouds. Again, breezy, breezy, breezy. Winds out of the south, again, 10 to 20 miles per hour, 15 to 20 if you wanted to get super specific. Higher gusts are not out of the question. It'll stay probably pretty breezy tonight, low 60s. Clouds will increase. The rain chances become slightly better. Go from 10 to 20%. Go from very isolated to just isolated. 7-day forecast made possible by 3B Hardware shows more of the same for Thursday. Warm. We bring the showers back in. Again, Thursday will not be as breezy as today. Probably still breezy, but not as breezy. Showers, maybe the occasional thunderstorm as that cold front moves through. We are briefly cooler Friday. It's nothing dramatic. And then temperatures rebound for Saturday, Sunday, and going into the early parts of next week. That would all fall just ahead of what could be a slightly more active pattern, or maybe a way more active pattern in parts of next week going into that next weekend. Also watching all of that stuff in full disclosure because we have a wedding in Galveston next weekend, so we're watching that intently for wedding festivities and also, for planning purposes. Like I said, when you own a business that's weather related, you acknowledge the fact that Mother Nature kind of dictates most of your plans. And so that involves, do I have all of the right equipment that if I need to go live from a hotel room somewhere down, can I do that? So yes, if you joined us yesterday, we talked about the anxiety, my very useful anxiety. I get very anxious about what can go wrong, so I usually am always formulating backup plans to backup plans. There's always something that I probably haven't thought of, though. Too Long Didn't Read set for 9:30 this morning. It should be out on time. Again, we have our Donuts with Grown-Ups, and I'm going to get my donuts. Don't worry. Love those things. And so, again, Too Long Didn't Read set for 9:30. I'll join you midday for a stream, and we'll join you a little bit later this afternoon as we continue to keep an eye on this ever-changing pattern and the possibility for rain chances tomorrow. Joy, good morning. Forecast is always available at digitalweatherdesk.com and on the Digital Weather Desk app, available for Apple and Android users. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. It's middle part of the week, folks. Hang in there. And again, we will trend warmer today as well. Also, extra hold hairspray if you're heading out and about, and that type of stuff is important to you because it's going to be a breezy Wednesday. Have a great day. I'll check in with you in a couple of hours.